Today we're with Joe Forzani, and we're going to be discussing vendor relationships. Number one, why your vendor is your number one most important relationship. Two, things you need to be very considerate of when dealing with that. We touch on that topic deeply, and especially when it comes down to business survivability. It was the relationships with vendors that can actually make or break your business overall. So we're going to deep dive into that today.
I'm Dennis.
And I'm Greg.
And this is the More Profit, Less Stress podcast,
where we provide the tools for more profit and less stress in your business now so you can turn into a valuable asset later. Welcome to the More Profit, Less Stress podcast. I'm Greg Forzani here with Dennis Takema, and our guest today is Joe Forzani. Joe was a founding member in Forzani Group, started with one store back in 1975, grew to 450-ish stores and sold by 2010. Welcome to the podcast, Joe, aka Dad. Today we want to talk about probably a subject actually you don't see a lot in podcasts. In fact, Dennis, have you ever seen a podcast on vendor relationships? Has anybody even talked about that?
No.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen one. So, and
the only thing people talk about is buy stuff cheaper, sell it for more. But they never actually talk about how to go about doing that or who to talk to.
It's the name of the podcast, buy stuff cheaper, sell it for more. I think it's such an important subject, and I think we have a great example of a company that did a really good job of it, and I personally believe it went a long way in contributing to the success of that company. So Dad, what would you say, how important were vendor relationships to the Forzani Group and the journey you went through and the profitability and all that stuff?
Well, in our business, in the retail business, vendor relationships were key because they're the ones we're making money off what they're selling us. So it's very important to carry on a really good relationship with them so we're treated like as well as anybody else. But the fact of the matter is, as a business owner, I have concerns about the vendor that I'm dealing with. And you know what? By the same token, the vendor has concerns about me. He's thinking about me and what I'm going through. So we both have concerns when we enter into a relationship of buying and selling. And some of my concerns, if I can explain it to him as a business owner, when I'm dealing with a vendor, particularly a new vendor, like the first thing that's coming to my mind is, am I getting the best price possible? Am I? I'm saying to myself, like he's got this book price, he's got a sheet that he's selling me something, whether it's nails or whether it's flowers or whether it's running shoes, Am I getting him a good price? Am I being shipped on time? Am I being shipped when it's supposed to be shipped? Because sometimes when I order something, I need that to succeed in business. If you go to a retail store and you're not shipped on time, you don't have anything to sell on the shelf, or you don't have anything new to sell on the shelf. And you could be counting on that at a specific date. For example, when we were in the sporting goods business, we started to bring our winter ski wear in. We had 20% come in August, 30% in September, 50% in 60% in November. So in September, we had to have, because one year in Calgary, it snowed every month of the year. So we had to make sure we have that product in the store. If we don't, we're losing sales. Now, the second thing is shipping is very important. Am I shipped on time? Do they substitute at all? Are they substituting this for that? Sometimes when you start off in a business and you order a certain product, then they don't have it. They ship another one that looks like it. It could be nails. It could be tools. It could be whatever. Well, no, that's not what I ordered. They're substituting. Why are they doing that? They're taking advantage of me. I don't know. Are my competitors getting a better price? That's a concern to me. Like, are they giving a better price to somebody else? What are the big guys getting? Like, if I'm buying this and that, if I'm buying, baseboards, like what price is somebody that's really big like Home Hardware getting, or Home Depot? Like, I'd like to know that. Am I getting any volume discounts? Is there any volume? I'm doing some fairly good business with this company. Am I getting better discounts? Repeat orders, are they always in stock? Why is it always a hard time getting through to them? Like, I've got a concern about that. Are the products that I'm buying from them of high quality, of the quality I think it should be? Sometimes maybe this vendor isn't the right one that I should be with, but he seems to be working, but I got to evaluate that. By and large, is he treating me good? Like, am I getting treated respectfully from this vendor? On the other hand, the vendor that's shipping the product, he's looking at the retailer or the service person or the company that he's shipping to. And the first thing that comes to my mind, am I going to get paid? Because when you ship something to somebody, you're taking a chance. You got to make sure you're getting paid. Now, first time people in business, chances are they're going to pay, or a lot of times because they're first time, you got to pay cash before it leaves the warehouse. That's tough because now the retailer or the business person now owns that product. As soon as you pay for it, you own it. It's yours. You better have made the right call. Secondly, the vendor is thinking, is this a good company I'm dealing with? These guys know what they're talking about. Do they know something about business? Here we go with this business experience thing again. You can't dodge that if there's dollars and cents involved. You can't dodge it. You can't duck. You're there. And that's what the vendor's thinking. He knows you want these flowers, but am I going to get paid for it? Vendor's asking a question, is this a company that's going to grow? Like, are they going to get bigger? Am I going to sell them more product? Or is it going to be a hassle every time and they're going to just do a $1,000 order every day, The vendor's going to probably send his sales team over to find out, who are my customers? Like, where am I located in the city if it's a retail operation of some kind? Or if it's a service company, like, who are my customers? Let me see who they are. The vendor's going to actually ask, is the merchandise presentable? Like if it's a service company and it's a one-shot deal and you're hiring baseboards, has nothing to do with merchandising. But if you're in retail or whatever, how does it look in the store, his product? It's very important to them. I think the vendor is very concerned. I think the main thing is getting paid and then making sure you're going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
The advantages of gaining some kind of a good relationship with a vendor, there's nothing wrong with that. We did it all the time, and I think it's one of our successes. God, I can remember when I first joined the company, and I went on a buying trip to what used to be a buying show in Montreal. I go down to Montreal, and John, I got in a little bit later in the business. I got in after 4 or 5 years, but John would take me to visit Adidas, and we would have the whole product of Adidas, and they also owned Bauer at the time, Bauer skates. They had Bauer shoes, and I visited Bauer. Well, that night, we got together over dinner, and it was like all the food and drinks, and just had a really good time with all their top staff, with our company. And oh my God, we had just a really good time. And I think over time, we built that really good relationship into really, really, really good pricing. We were always one of the first ones shipped. We felt like we were getting the best discounts. We felt that we were getting, and they felt it too, because over time, the more we paid them on time, the longer the terms of our payback was. So again, after 2 or 3 years, we paid in 30 days. Well, after 2 or 3 years paying in 30 days, they said, hey, how about extending that to 60 days? We need more time to sell the product. And sure enough, we would get terms like half 30 and half 60. Hey, after year 2 going into the third year, we were organizing like half 60, half 90. I think the best prices we got, Greg, you could go on and tell more about that. We were bringing product in from the vendors and we were getting like half 90 and a half 120. Can you imagine getting $1 million of inventory and having to pay that, half of it in 90 days? So it's on the floor for 90 days. You're getting money back to sell, and 120 days. That was really good. We're almost sold out of the inventory, and then we paid for it, which was fantastic. So, but by building strong relationships, it was easier to do business with. There was more understanding. There was more, but we always had, the bottom line is you got to pay. You got to pay when you're supposed to pay. And, if you're a business starting off and you're paying cash, that's okay. That's okay for a year or two, but maybe after a year or two and you're faithful about that, you should maybe approach a vendor and say, hey, listen, come on, you're giving terms to some guys because I'm sure that you're marking it up accordingly, blah, blah, blah. He said, any way that I can pay you in 30 days or maybe half cash and half 30 days, and start the process that way. Again, it's another way. The more you can save money by dishing out money, the stronger you're going to be as a company, the stronger the bottom line is. The more you can keep money for a longer period of time, the better it is, So particularly if you're buying new inventory and stuff. There is a lot of, obviously, a lot of benefits for that.
For sure. I think I remember, yeah, to hit on, like you've already hit on a few, but what I found is learning from you guys that vendor relationships were so important that whether you're in the, like we were in the product business back then, but whether you're in the service business or the product business, what I found is when they had the opportunity, if they had some kind of deal they could give. So they had, I don't know, they had some leftover product, or they had something that wasn't selling well, or they had to move it and get rid of it and get it out of inventory. They knew to call us first because A, we had a great relationship, meaning we had an actual personal relationship outside of work. So, you know, you go golfing together, or you, like I remember in our old business, we had go-kart races with our vendors. Remember that? So, like we'd bring vendors in and our team in the office, and we'd go have go-kart races. Like just things to build a relationship, show them you care outside of work, meet up, go on personal outings that's not business related. You don't even have to talk business. And that relationship led to, again, if they had a deal to get rid of, they had something to get out of or sell or whatever, they'd call us first. Or if they had some new product or something that came in, they'd call us first and give us the introduction first. Even if you're in a service business, your vendors are your sub-trades. Well, if a sub-trade isn't booked 100% of the time, then when they're not booked, you could get a deal for that time maybe. Like that sub-trade, when they're not busy, you can give them an extra job, and maybe they'll give you 10 or 20% discount or whatever during that time window to give you the work because they're not busy. So they're trying to give you a deal to get the work. So, you know, businesses in the service business should think of it like a product business. And product, and I'll spell this out. If you're in the product business and your vendor, it's say a shoe company like Nike, and they have a product that's not selling well, because they all do. All product manufacturers and vendors have products that don't sell well. If that product's not selling well, they got to get rid of it. They phone their retailers and they offer a discount. If they have a ton, they'll phone a bunch of retailers. If they just have a little bit, they'll phone the retailers that they have the best relationship with. So if that's you, boom, you got it. That's what we did really well back in the day. But if you're a service company and you let your vendors know, hey, like I'm a contractor or renovator or whatever, and you let your service companies know, if you got a downtime and you're dead, let me know, and I'll see if I can find a job to put you on. Give me a little break during that downtime. I'll keep you busy and give you the work. And then, you know, the business gets a deal. Like those are all huge things, right? And you kept saying about paying the bills. And man, you're so right. I think there's another layer to that. So one, like you said, if you're paying your bills on time, your vendors are going to work closely with you, trust you, give you longer payment terms. That's great.
Absolutely.
But in any business, the one group of companies that knows how healthy everybody is the vendors. Because the vendors are the ones that get paid from the businesses. Whether you're in the sub-trades or in the service industry or a product industry, if you start paying your vendors late, your vendors see all businesses and they know who's paying on time and who's paying late. And if they see someone's consistently paying late, I promise you, those vendors, the credit managers, have relationships with credit managers in other vendors, and they talk. And if all those vendors start saying, oh yeah, this company's always paying their bills late, boom, red flags go up, and now you're going to have problems getting product shipped on time. Now you're going to have problems, your sub-trade showing up or wanting to do the work without a big deposit. So if you have payment terms, that sub-trade is no longer going to give you the payment terms, because on the back end, they see you're paying your bills late, and they've talked to other credit managers and other sub-trades, and they know they're paying late. That's a big deal. So paying your bills on time, you know, and Dennis, I'll throw this over to you. To pay your bills on time, what's the number one freaking thing you got to do? What allows you to pay your bills on time?
Make money.
Yeah, got to make a profit.
Making money.
So number one in this whole conversation of vendor relationships is you better freaking figure out how to get profitable, because that brings healthy cash flow. Healthy cash flow goes back to, Dad, like you said, you got to pay your vendors on time. And so important. I
think we need to clarify some terms, because people throw the word profit around the same way they throw anything else around without really knowing what it means. When we say be profitable, we mean be net profitable. We mean after all your expenses are covered, not just the difference between your buy price and your selling price isn't profit. Profit is the difference between my buy price, my sell price, and everything else I have to pay for. Otherwise, a lot of people end up in problems where they they leverage from one vendor to try to pay off a previous vendor, and they go back and forth, and they just find themselves in a situation where they can't pay anything. So when we say profit, it's net profit, it's leftover profit, not the spread.
100%. So to go back to the point you made earlier about trusting the vendor and the vendor trusts you, I remember my wife and I had a pet store, and she managed the pet store, and what she was able to flag is something that is super common in many businesses, which is if she didn't actually compare the packing slip of product she got from the vendor to actually what was in the boxes. So she'd open the boxes, count it, mark it on the packing slip. If she didn't compare that, she'd have never found out what she found out, which was that literally probably in, we never measured this, but let's say 25% of the shipments, what the packing slip said and what was in the boxes didn't match. And almost always the packing slip number was higher than what was in the boxes. I firmly believe, being in retail for so many years, that vendors intentionally short ship the boxes what the packing slip says. And if they find a customer that never disputes it, they'll keep doing it to that customer. If they short ship every single order, if they short ship 2 or 3 or 5% and the customer never notices, over a period of time, that adds up to so much money. And if the business doesn't do that and match it, they never catch it. So now, if the business builds a really good relationship with the vendor most likely will not try that with that customer, with that store. That's a huge deal. Sorry, what else were you were gonna talk about some other points?
Well, I was just the advantages of strong vendor relationships. I'll go through a bunch here. Number one, there's a strong possibility that there's a discount, that you're going to get a pretty good discount if you've got a really good vendor relationship. And that takes time to build a relationship. Again, at least a year or two. You got to need a year or two, because in that year or two, you've got transactions back and forth. You're shipping and receiving. And each time you pay on time, every time you're building credibility, the vendor's going, oh God, this person's good. I can really trust him. So you're really building mutual trust and loyalty to the business and loyalty to each other, because they make their money on their selling their goods to me and trying to make a profit. I'm selling it to the consumer or my customer and trying to make a profit. The second thing is, you're fostering high quality products always. After you've been with a vendor for so long, you start to find out how good his product is. I remember that when we were in business, we would always try to go down to the United States to buy U.S. product, bring it into Canada, because there's a lot of people in the States that make really creative, like toques and hats, and more so. And as a retailer, you always try to be a little different than everybody else. So I can remember one year we went down to a trade show in the United States and brought in some U.S. made toques. And you know what? Oh, they were great. They would have flown off the shelf. They were a little higher priced because of dollar exchange, but they tried to make it work. They heard that we were a good company and they tried. But when we got the product that they shipped for that fall, they only shipped half the product. That's all they had left. Well, it didn't make any sense. The good stuff they didn't, it was terrible. So I never dealt with them again. They wrote them off, didn't deal with that vendor anymore. So, so you're always fostering high quality products. With good vendor relationships help you to streamline the process to get it here quicker. Like if there's any problems with the postal problems, any trucking problems, anything like, what did we just go through? COVID. They help to streamline it better. They'll get it to you regardless. They know people. Vendors know a lot about the business that you're in. Ask them what's happening. They're really a really good contact. They'll tell you what's happening Canada-wide if they sell Canada, or they'll sell you provincial-wide or Western Canada. Don't be afraid. Again, put your humble hat on and learn what's happening. Who's doing what? What areas are they doing good in? What seems to be happening? If you're a carpenter, is plaster out and this is in? Is it more asphalt in terms of paving patios than cement? I don't know. Like, what's going on? Suppliers know that. And by them, you sharing some knowledge about what you're doing, they know kind of what I'm doing because of what I'm ordering. But find out what they're doing and what they think. They can help to drive innovation in new areas. They can maybe tell me that, you know what, you seem to be really good in baseboards, but have you really tried to get into what's really seemed to be happening is people are building more decks. Like our deck business is going out of whack. Like, if you tried to look into that more, I'm just throwing this out. I'm not a carpenter, but they can help to drive innovation in new areas. They can help to build long-term relationships. And I think when you build long-term relationships with one or two companies, you get to know how to do it. And you can use a lot of those skills into developing new friendships and new ideas. You can improve your customer satisfaction knowing that if a vendor is going to support you, then you can support the customer on their product. And I think that's really important. You have the confidence to do it. So you always should have a vendor spokesman. Now, whether the vendor spokesman is the president of that company or a salesman or whatever that person is, you should get to know that person that you're dealing with that's responsible for putting the order in, and not necessarily the CEO, but the person that's because he's the one that's talking about you all day long. He's the one that's bragging about you to the CEO. Sometimes some people go to the CEO and the CEO doesn't even know what the hell's going on with your business. So make sure that the person that you're dealing with from the vendor side is actually the person that's taking the order and putting the order in. That's really important. I think after that, the CEO and all those other vice presidents are good, but that main person is key, because if there's a problem, that salesman took your order, he's representing the company, and if something goes wrong, he's going to really help you out of it. Another thing is that if you're doing well in a certain area, and there's certain things that the vendor's doing that's kind of risky, that they'll help with risk management. So if they want to send it, like if I'm dealing with Nike and Nike's going to send me new rugby shoes, we've never carried rugby shoes. Holy shit. Like that requires carrying 14 models. It's requiring. And well, what if they don't sell? What if rugby people don't come in the sport check? Well, I don't know. Well, they may feel so good about it. They may even call it consignment, or they'll help you, give you more terms, or they'll help you, if it doesn't work out, give you discount dollars to help to clear so you won't. So they help risk areas. So if there's areas that they want you to cover, that they want you to sell, and you don't want to sell it, maybe you can arrive at something that both parties will help so it becomes more secure for you and not such a downturn. So as well, in vendor relationships, again, business coaches deal with so many different businesses that require so many different areas. But if it requires staff and education, product knowledge, usually the person taking the order wants his product to sell well in your stores. So he wants to make sure that the sales staff is really up to date on his product. So he's going to go into stores and he's going to help to give product knowledge to educate the staff and treat the staff really well. I can remember, Greg, some of our best vendors that we did biggest business with will send their staff into the stores and they'll have product knowledge evenings where they'll bring in the salesperson or the product knowledge person will buy pizzas and beer and treat the whole staff to a whole evening, and then they'll educate the staff. So the staff knows when a customer walks in the store and we've got conflicting lines, they'll probably go to the product knowledge who best took care of the staff. So that's really important to get good vendors that have product knowledge and good staff. So the last thing is that a strong vendor relationship will definitely help and more efficiently help with problem areas. And I think that's really key. You don't want to argue with a vendor that his product didn't work out, that you are defective. I mean, it's got to happen. If they're defective, take them off the floor and they've got to give you money back if they're a good company. If they're not going to do that, then what the hell are you doing dealing with them? If you're going to argue with their product that's not quality controlled and you're selling it or dealing with it, and he's not going to support you, what are you doing with them? There's tons of vendors in all areas. Like there's as many vendors selling product as there is retailers selling it. You know what I mean? Like, well, maybe not as many, but there's a lot of vendors. Don't take anything that you feel is wrong to heart. You fight for it. You fight for everything you got. And if you don't like it, go buy from somebody else and trust him. And you'll find a lot of good vendors. Some of the biggest and strongest vendors are the best, have the best lines, have the best quality control, and have the best terms. And if you treat them right, I'm going to leave one thing only. If you're a business just starting off and you're bringing in stuff, paying cash, or you're getting 15 days, or whatever you're doing, always, always, always pay on time. Don't be late. It's key. That alone will give you strides forward in whatever it is you're trying to do and whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. That's my bottom line.
Sure. I think anybody listening to this that thinks, well, that's just retail, the same applies in service, like in trades. I mean, Dennis, we hear all the time, right? Sub trades, like, they do shitty work or don't show up or they're inconsistent, or like it's the same with sub trades. So if you're a contractor, renovator, or whatever kind of business builder, whatever it is, and you got sub trades doing the same problem, it's the same list of rules.
I've got a client specifically in construction where we were looking at some of his pricing overall. And we're looking at, okay, well, his pricing for what he's doing is a lot higher than his competition for what they're doing, so what's our problem? So we had to chase that back to vendors. And we took a look at what some of the vendors were supplying some of the materials for, and then we phoned up other people within his same organization to find out what they were paying for, where they were paying for it. And the same vendor can be charging different prices to different customers. And that's what we came down with was, okay, well, this vendor is charging us X amount of percentage points more than the exact same guy who's doing the exact same thing in a slightly different region. So that armed us with the ability to go back and have that discussion with the vendor. I think when we talk about vendors, it's also very important to remember that a vendor is a business too. They're in the job of trying to sell stuff as much as you're in the process of trying to sell stuff. So that's where the conversation comes in. It's respect between the two of them. And when he could lay out the facts and the guy really didn't have anything to fall back on, we were able to reduce his overall cost, which brought his prices down, which allowed him to be more competitive in the marketplace. But it goes back to what Joe was saying. You can't be afraid to have those conversations and to renegotiate because you don't know what they're willing to do for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Look, the difference, usually vendors, when they're trying to make their money, they're selling large quantities quickly. Usually they're selling large quantity to a multiple businesses. Okay? Whereas if you've got one store, or if you're a single service company, you're buying just for one store. So consequently, big businesses, big vendors work on smaller margins than independent companies or service companies. So you have to realize that they're trying to make money too, but they sell large companies. But if somebody goes bankrupt with their if one vendor sells a whole bunch of stores and that company goes bankrupt, they're hurt quite deeply.
Yeah.
Just remember that your margins are a lot higher because you're selling one at a time, as it were. You understand what I'm getting at?
Well, even on I've had some clients that are manufacturers that deal directly with other businesses or directly with consumers, and a lot of people don't realize that when you're dealing with a manufacturer, they've got something called tooling costs. They got to gear up the equipment to be able to run a batch of stuff. That the bigger the batch you can buy, the overall less expense they have going into producing that because the tooling cost is covered. If I want somebody to give me a very specific widget and it takes them 14 hours to tool up the machine to produce one thing, you're going to spend a lot of money on that one thing. It's why vendors can afford to do bulk discounts if you can renegotiate how much you're trying to get, because it actually saves them money and makes their margin better by selling to you in bulk.
And Dennis, sometimes it's a good idea if you've got multiple vendors in the same area, the same category, sometimes it's a good idea to cut back. Don't go as wide with those vendors. Cut back and give your 2 or 3 vendors a lot more business that gives you more volume that you're buying from and might get you more discounts and getting you treated more favorably. Do you follow me?
But it goes back to your one key thing too, which is when they send you the bill, pay it.
Yes. On time. I think it's key to pay it on time. Don't try to get away with a week or even a day. These guys, vendors, like they're paying interest daily. I remember John coming to me one time, Greg, when we were just starting off with one of the franchises that we were running. John came to me and I had some money in the bank. We had, I think we had $20,000. We had payables coming up, but they weren't due yet. And so there was money sitting in the bank, $20,000. And my brother John came over and said, Joe, get into a bank so every day that money is gaining interest at $20,000. So, it might be a small thing, but if you look at like every day you're getting interest on that money, it might be $20. But if you keep adding that up on all these days, all year long, that money's always growing. And it was a really good point. Don't ever have money sitting there. Even though you got payables coming up, it should be gaining interest every day. And that's what suppliers are working on. When they ship product and they're giving you terms every day, they've got to have, that money's out, that they're borrowing money to ship you, so like it's a dog eat dog breakfast in that sense.
Well, and I think that's where you're going back to. It's so important to foster those relationships.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, there's so many
if
things.
If a vendor wants to be able to trust on his cash flow, and if you can provide them that cash flow and you become dependable, they're more likely to work with you through different situations and circumstances.
Yeah. And it's a good thing when you're talking to vendors, and I don't think you can do it over the phone. I think it's really important when you can, is to try to meet them face to face. We always try to buy them lunch or have a coffee with them. As we got bigger, we had dinners. Usually they paid. Usually a vendor always paid. But it's a good idea face to face. That way you can sort of talk about different things, talk about mutual likeness, things you like to do, things that kids, recreation. There's always something that comes into events. So it's like forming a friendship. And today I've been retired for over 10 years now, and I still have 3 or 4 or 5 vendors. A guy our number one salesperson for R&R was Rockport Shoes. And their head guy has got a commonality with me with having grandchildren. And he just sent me a note. He's been retired for 10 years, so have I. And just how are things going, what's happening. And so every time I go to Toronto, Greg and I actually met with him last time. We just carry on with a friendship. We've developed friendships. So it's developing a new friend. Now, not all will be friendships. Obviously, not everybody you meet is a friend. But certainly, the more friendship you can develop, the more ease it's going to be in working with them. You know what I mean? And I think that we've done that and it worked for us, like charming worked for us. And we knew other retailers that didn't do that. We always got treated royally, but we did pay on time.
And it means, like you said, find common interests or hobbies or things that you can go do together outside of work, whether it's meals or golf or fishing or I don't know, whatever it happens to be, skiing. Been on lots of vendor ski trips, just stuff like that. Just build that relationship, build that friendship, and that leads to so many other things.
Oh, I was going to mention one, Mark Michel. He sold his turtlenecks, and so we were buying turtlenecks from him. Well, they were going to try to get into a field with neon shorts, and that's when the neon colors were strong about 15, 20 years ago. And so they decided to get into neon shorts. Well, these neon shorts never sold for them. We never bought any. They were a Quebec company. They tried to sell it to nobody bought them. So anyway, I went to visit him. There was a sporting goods show in Quebec and Montreal. So I went to visit him. So at his office, sometimes it's really good to visit somebody at their office. You can kind of see what's in their warehouse if there's anything. So I saw these neon shorts, boxes of these neon shorts. There were men's and ladies shorts, and the neon trend was over. So I said, so what are you going to do with those shorts? He said, oh, God, I've tried to sell them. I can't sell them and this and that. I said, well, I'll tell you what, Mark. Do you want me to get them off your hands? He said, yeah, please. Yeah, what do you want to do? I said, well, I'll offer you 25 cents a pair. 25 cents? Come on, they're $10 cost. I said, well, if you really want to get rid of them, I'll give you 25 cents. He said, well, give me 30 cents. Take them all. And it was about 2,000 or 3,000 pair. So 30 cents a 2,000 pair was $600. I don't know what it was, something like that. So we bought them all. Well, we had a sale. Are you ready for this? We put those neon shorts on, regular $40 for $4.99, and we sold them all for $4.99. It's one of the biggest profit pictures I ever had. Well, I'll tell you what, I wouldn't be able to do that. It was a fun thing. And today, every time I talk to Mark, I talk to him 2 or 3 times a year. Today, we bring up the neon shorts and we giggle about it and laugh about it. So you never know, like when you develop a friend, there's different situations. And if you got things in common, you can talk about. Bottom line, even on a friendship, got to pay on time. You got to pay on time. Don't ever take advantage of a friendship. They will support you to the nth degree. Got to pay on time. Or if you don't, if you think you can get away with it, he's going to treat me different. No. Paying on time is number one. If you don't do it, you got to go borrow the money. You got to do everything you can. And if you can't, you've got to tell him, I'm running into financial problems. And he's got to now consider that when he ships you. So, and a good friend will tell you the good and the bad.
Another one I thought we did a good job of back in the day was by developing those relationships, we were able to have legitimate conversations with vendors about volume rebate scales, right? Like we're able to say, okay, if we do more money, will you give us a discount? And then they always say, well, how about we give you the extra discount after you prove you're going to do the bigger sales? Okay. So we started getting into building rebate scales, Absolutely. Right? And that got to a point where, we probably averaged, 3 to 5% or 3 to 7% on all vendors on rebate scales, which enticed us to spend more with less vendors, like you said a few minutes ago, like deal with less vendors, spend more with each one. But then that allowed us to go back to them and say, okay, we'll get into bed with you, but we need a rebate scales. And it's not necessarily give us a bigger discount up front. It's if we do the revenue with you, then give us a rebate on that. I think at one point, those rebates were somewhere between 1/4 and 1/3 of our total profit at the end of the year as a major company.
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
Any industry can do that.
Somebody just starting off might not be in a position to do that, but over time, you can work yourself up to that if you stay in it long enough, or if you're, you know what I mean?
I think that goes back to a previous conversation we had before about habits equals success, right? If you're in the habit of taking care of your vendors have a habit then of trying to take care of you.
Totally agree with that. Yeah, that old thing about trust and loyalty, that goes 1.5 miles. It really does. Greg, these people, I don't know, I'm just saying, people that are in the service end of things, back to the carpenter, he's used to buying nails, and I'm just saying this, from Home Hardware. Well, the fact of the matter is, that's okay. That's good for nails from Home Hardware. But there's just somebody else that's selling nails that might not be as big as Home Hardware, that's selling a different type of nail that maybe that's smaller than Home Hardware, that's trying to, he's a manufacturer that's trying to grow. I tried to order some nails from him to see how it goes, because as you get bigger, you're going to get more things from him than you will from Home Hardware or any of those big companies like that. You know what I'm saying? And there always is a small guy. Greg, when we were in the shoe business, there was the big five: Puma, Nike, Adidas, all those guys, Reebok. But then there was always 4 or 5 guys coming up in the shoe business. They're all trying to make it, all offering different things, whatever. And sometimes some of these guys make it. Well, if you start off with them, they really appreciate you as a company. And because you helped them out early, oh my God, you're on board, and they might not be your top 3, but certainly they could be your top 3 in profit. They could be your top 3 in profit margin, percentage, all that kind of stuff. So there's always that. So we used to always make our money with the big boys, but any new vendors coming along, we would always try them, because, man, if they do well, we would do well. And it's like you're always experimenting new things. We were like 85% for sure, 15% trying new things, new areas, new development. Always had some money in the kitty for new and different. And whether it was a vendor, whether it was whatever. Like, I remember we were in sporting goods. We remember in Sun Sports, we brought in bikinis, God, I don't know. On that, we had a bunch of shoe dogs trying to sell swimwear to women, that wasn't good. So we got out of that. So we would try We tried bowling shoes, and well, we found out the bowling alley sold the bowling shoes and that didn't good. We tried equestrian shoes, like. Well, anyways, you're always pioneering and you should try, say 15% of your money towards that. But 80% of your money, 85% of your money should be towards with strong vendors and good what, you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, use some capital to test different avenues because you never know what's going to win. But don't throw everything at something new. Just test it out in small chunks. Because you don't know. Like you said, you guys tested bowling shoes, and that could have taken off like crazy and unexpectedly.
Yeah.
But you don't know until you test it.
No. Well, you know what? I remember Baz coming one day, and we tested a new area with Reebok. Reebok years ago. Well, we're talking 25 years ago. Reebok came up with jazzercise shoes. Remember those? They're kind of high top for women. Jazzercise shoes. They're aerobic shoes. And so Baz thought he would try these aerobic shoes, and we carried them in Sunsports. Well, all of a sudden, the aerobic area went crazy. Women were buying aerobic shoes for the street shoes. Oh man, we couldn't carry enough of them. We couldn't get it. We're sold out. And then when you get a really high consumer volume area, it always sort of dies off, but you got to be prepared for that. But in the service centers, it might not be like that. Flowers are flowers.
Wasn't that the Reebok Princess? Wasn't that the name of the shoe?
It's the Reebok Princess.
Yeah. And then they came out with the high top. I remember that.
My point is, if you're a small retailer and you're selling dog food, there's some key ones, but gee, there's a lot of companies selling dog food. Go to a dog food show. That's another thing. We went to
trade shows.
We made it necessary to go to trade shows wherever they were, if they're any local, provincial, anywhere in Canada, in the States. I even went to we went to worldwide shows, world ski shows in Germany. They had the biggest ski shows in the world in Germany. They had the running shoes shows in LA. They had beach shows in LA. But because if you go to a show, it's not necessarily for what you're looking at. It's what's happening in your area. If you're a carpenter and you go to a trade show on home decor, home whatever, go to one of those. See what's happening. You may see women getting into tiles, a new tile, and it's a rubberized tile that was started in France. And geez, it looks like an Italian tile, but it's half the price. Oh man, what's that? It's not so much you learn about your own business, but you can see trends. You can start to form friendships. You can start to talk to different people. You can meet retailers from other parts of the country. I remember going to trade shows. Oh God, I met retailers from California, same area, and what they were selling, what their stores looked like. And they couldn't believe that we were bringing in all this product in September because we're gearing up for winter. They still have summer till Christmas, you know what I mean? And so we talk about all these things. And at trade shows, they have suppliers or vendors will have educational seminars that you can go to that will talk about different parts of your business, how you can cut costs and how you can do this. Greg, I think every year till I last stayed in retail, trade shows were up on the list. I went to find money to go to these trade shows. Now, when you go to a trade show, you don't have to stay in really expensive hotels. You can work with Airbnb. You can take taxis. You can do whatever and just go for 2 or 3 days. But my gosh, when you're there, it's a whole new world. We used to go to the trade show for shoes in Las Vegas. They had the biggest shoe shows in the world. Listen to this. They had 3,000 or 4,000 vendors. How about going to a trade show to buy shoes and there's 4,000 suppliers of shoes at that show? And we're dealing with 20. But oh my God, I was walking around the show, I remember I walked around, I was looking at one company had shoes for prostitutes. The high heel boot, but they had everything. But my point is, in your area, you can find out so much about what's happening, what's going on, who's new. When you're at a trade show, you can always meet the president of the company that you're dealing with. And I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Going back to relationships. No, it's awesome. Appreciate it.
I don't care what you're selling, Greg. Sorry. I don't care whether, like I said, it's tiles or baseboards or nails or flowers or whatever your dog food, whatever I've been bringing up. There's a trade show for everybody that's in that. There is. There's got to be. And having said that, go to those shows and see what's happening. It's really, really important.
I think one of the things you made a comment in there about that most people don't stop to consider is the one comment you made around if you go to enough trade shows, you start to spot trends. And I think when most people are going, they're not actually going from a market research perspective. They're going for a what can I buy and a what can I sell perspective, not a what's actually happening in the marketplace and how's it evolving perspective. And that, I think for a lot, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. Entering it from that perspective actually can help you get ahead of the curve.
Absolutely.
And sell a lot more stuff.
Absolutely. It builds your creativity. Absolutely. We talked about that earlier.
If we go to those cities or those trade shows and they're a big city that's popular, we'd even go check out that market for a half a day and see what the big retailers in that market were doing.
Greg, I remember I was trying to help somebody in sportswear here in Calgary. I was helping this lady that was trying to build her sportswear business. They were doing tracksuits and stuff just a few years ago. And so she enrolled in a trade show, the biggest beach show in California. And so she bought a booth. Well, what she did was she was just starting off and she had a few customers. She felt that her creativity in that field was great. She bought a booth at the swimwear show or sports show down in California. And so she had a booth and she brought all her staff down. She hired models, professional models to wear in the booth. She ended up spending like $35,000 on this trade show. I'm trying to help her, and I found out. I said, why would you spend that much money? I said, did you get it back? Well, no, we talked to a lot of customers, but nobody really gave us an order. Well, you got to start off small. Like if you're going to go to a trade show and you feel like you're worthy of going in and you have something to sell, go at each trade show. You've got new vendors or new manufacturers. They're just starting off. They've got their own area. Look for that area. Talk to them about what it's like to open up. It's new. What's the cost? What did you have to do? They'll tell you. And they're brand new because the big guys, the people that are doing all the big, huge business, they've all got big, massive booths and they're spending thousands of dollars to be there. But they're going to get a return on that investment by all the people seeing their lines. But anybody new, don't watch how much money you spend because you want to make sure that the money you're spending, you're getting it back. You've got a return on what you're trying to accomplish. And so this girl, after that episode, she closed her business about 2 months later. She ran out of money to spend it all. And it was needlessly spent. She's trying to think that she was in the big leagues, Anyway, didn't have a business coach that she was talking about beforehand.
I'd like to touch on one other thing too. We did a previous podcast with you before where you talked about how being able to negotiate with your vendors is actually one of those things that allowed you guys to turn a potential bankruptcy into an actual success. So how did your vendor relationships, like just maintaining relationships with your vendors, how did that allow you guys to get out of that troubled environment?
Well, for 20 years, they knew what we were capable of. If you're playing for the Blue Jays and you're a hitter and you go into a slump and over 50 games you have 2 hits, they keep you on. If you've been there before, why can't you repeat that? And I think we had that going for us. Absolutely. The second thing is, Dennis, those big vendors were making huge money off us. We were selling Canada-wide. They couldn't afford to let us go. They were selling us, they sell a guy, Nike would sell a running shoe store here in Calgary, $20,000 worth of product in a year. You follow me? Mm-hmm. Great for them. But they were selling Forzani Group, $15 million worth of product in a year. So how do we come back? Well, if we hired the new CFO, COO, new computer systems, all that thing, they looked at all that we've done and what we did in the past, all of that, they believed in us and they went with us. And boy, did it ever work. Greg, that has to be one of the biggest turnarounds. I hate to brag, but that has to be one of the biggest turnarounds of business in Canada ever. I don't know if anybody's ever really sort of looked at that under a microscope, but there was a lot going on. Dennis, when John went down there, how humble he must have been, but how humble we are having to go to our staff saying, we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know what we were doing, but you got to believe that we're coming back, and get it. And they're going, oh my God, what am I doing here? I thought I was going to grow with this company. And I've been here 5 years and holy shit, they're no better than me. Well, but how it all turned around and the not only the egos, but the self-confidence and all that, how it turned around was unbelievable.
On the vendor conversation, what you're saying is that it was the reps you put in of being loyal, of paying your bills on time, of making sure that they were taken care of over the long term, that when things got tight for you, they had your back. They understood that you had built it's not like you just came out of the woodwork, were buying from them for 3 days and now asking for trust.
They're cheering for us. They want us to do well. We're selling their product. They're making money when we're making money. They're cheerleading us in the back. Absolutely. They're the number one person in the company, really, for those guys, because we're selling their product.
So I think that's I don't want people to bypass that. It's the effort you put into taking care of the people you need to take care of in the process that makes sure that you can stick around the long term when your life doesn't go straight. So you're never using your vendor to get to a result. It's a partnership to get to a goal together.
Absolutely. Total partnership.
I was going to say, if you create a win-lose where they're always losing, they're going to stop working with you. They'll stop helping you out. They'll stop doing that stuff. So that's a short-term gain. It's got to be a win-win.
Yeah, it's almost as a business and you're working with a vendor, you have to understand how does the vendor making money. So if you understand how he's making money and you go along with that and you're helping him make money, meanwhile you're going to get treated differently because you understand where he's coming from and he's going to treat you, he's going to give you everything he can because he knows that you're helping him make money. Just as he's helping you make money. It's like you said, Dennis, it's a two-way street. It's a partnership. And you have to look at it that way. We looked at all our vendors as partners.
In the process of dealing with vendors, there's times you can deal with what appears to be unreasonable terms. Like if you want to have a return for defective product, their notification window might be unreasonably small, or they may have percentages of what you can or can't return, or other things that may come across as being, well, I'd rather deal with a Rona, at least I can bring it back tomorrow, than you who won't let me bring it back at all. How do you handle or negotiate with vendors when you feel like their terms with you are completely unreasonable compared to your terms with them?
I would say two things on that to answer it. I would say one would be kind of what we've already talked about today and Dad alluded to, which is if you build a good relationship and there's a trust there and both companies understand what the other company needs to be successful and you build a relationship and you want to be ethical, then number one is you got to build that. And if they'll follow suit and they'll treat you appropriately and ethically and build that win-win, then fantastic. If they won't, then my advice absolutely always is find a different vendor. Find one that will. Now, there are situations like, we used to have a franchise store, my wife operated it, where because it was a franchise setup, she didn't have that flexibility to find different vendors. So if you're working with a vendor and they're not doing that, it's difficult because they just may not be ethical or may not want to work with you. The second thing I would say is this: to present the situation to your vendor, to present what's going on, you got to take facts and you got to take logic, and you got to show like, this is what's happening. You're saying you're going to charge me this, but you're charging me more. You said you shipped this, but you shipped me less. If you go or we're priced at this and everybody else is lower priced or better, like you got to take the facts to them. That if the relationship is good and they're ethical and there's somebody you want to work with, then they'll fix it. They just didn't know. They didn't know any better. They didn't know the facts. They'll fix it. But if they take the facts and go, well, that's it, business is business, then you got to find a different vendor. You got to work with somebody else. Now, if you're in a situation where you don't have choices, like you're a franchise and you're kind of forced, then you got to make a decision. Is that somewhere I want to be? Right? And then you move on.
I remember first got into the business, sporting goods business. Again, we just more or less started off. We had 2 or 3 stores, 4 stores, and customers were bringing things back like ski jackets that were defective seams and shoes that a mountain climber or a climber or a hiker wore like for 6 months and it brought it back that it was worn, the sole was worn out. They wanted a new pair. Oh, God, this happened all the time. So anyway, we would then take the shoe back from the customer because we always wanted to keep our customers happy, right? We send it back, have the salesman come by and pick it up, or we'd mail it back to Toronto to the vendor, and then they would look at it, and they would either give us their money back or send a new pair of shoes. But this was 3 or 4 stores. This went on and on. This was ridiculous. So after a few years in the business, we tried to keep working. We tried to work closely with, use your salesman. He's the one that's got to do all the running around. Anyway, so what we eventually worked on was this. After we got big enough to help with defects, we automatically took 1% off invoice for defective goods. So if Nike shipped us $1 million worth of shoes, we took 1% off invoice. We took off $10,000 for defective merchandise. Okay. Now we haven't had any yet. We got 10,000 to the good. Now, as the year went on, each time there was a defect and we gave them a new pair of shoes, we made record of that. So at the end of year 1, we either owed Nike money or Nike owed us more money, depending on how the number of defects that came in. Boy, did that ever work well. Now, here's what we had to do. When the defect came in, we had to destroy that defect. But what we were doing was throwing it in the garbage, and a lot of people were picking it up from the garbage, going to another store and returning it for a new pair of shoes. Can you believe that? It actually happened. So then what we had to do, the managers had to make sure that when we took the defect back, that we actually cut it up like it was destroyed. So there's a creative way of doing it. So that eliminated all shipping back. And the fact of the matter is the stores, the managers, they didn't just give their money back. I actually instructed the store managers that if it was a defect, that you felt that it was a real defect and that it was the best thing for the company to give them a new pair of shoes, then go ahead and do that. But don't get in an argument with a customer. The last thing I needed was a manager to argue with the customer about the defect. And then for a week, the manager was in a bad mood over that decision that they made, and they didn't worry about their business over a stupid defective shoe. I said, if you get into that situation, give them a new pair of shoes. It's okay. And you know what, worked really well, and we did that for about 10 or 15 years. That worked fantastic. But we're big enough to do that. If you're a franchisee and that happens, you got to go to your franchise people, and you got to explain it to them that one of the key suppliers of the franchise is treating me like this. And sometimes a franchisor would have to make different arrangements with the vendor that they're dealing with, because it's all of the franchises that they're selling to, right? Is that right? You know what I mean? So that becomes a whole franchise division. But anyway, like Greg says, if it's a smaller vendor and they're not treating you right, then drop them. You've got no choice. There's other people that want to have your business. You're kind of in the driver's seat a bit, owning your own business, because you're making money for the vendor. Like, they need you. They need you really bad. So the better you can do with them and the better you can get along with them, the more money he's going to make, the more money you're going to make. You know what I mean? So it's one way to think about that.
Well, and as you said before, there are dozens of vendors to choose from. It's just a matter of testing out the relationships and finding out who's worth investing the time in.
Yeah.
I think that's the important thing people forget about being in business too, is what you mentioned, is you have a lot of control to be able to pick and choose your relationships. But also keep in mind, if you're the asshole approaching all the relationships, you're going to get the response that you deserve. So make sure that you're entering into it from the right position too.
Right on. Pay on time. That's key. The number one thing in vendor retail or vendor business relationships is to pay on time. The number one thing. This is the number one thing that a vendor wants. The number one thing a retailer wants is to be shipped on time. Those are the two keys. Those are like edge and stone. Those are non-breakable. You know, Greg, and I think you've seen it, over time, we have canceled orders because vendors are late. So we got a window of August 1st to August 30th to deliver a product. If they're past August 30th for whatever reason that the vendor had problems in China, or a boat went down, whatever. If we get it in September, we cancel the order. Now we're in the driver's seat. The vendor says, no, you can't cancel. We'll take it back and give us another 25% discount. So it's going to be a margin thing on the vendor's part and a margin gain on our part.
This includes service businesses, right? Like someone shows up late to do the plumbing job or the tile job or whatever it is. Same thing can apply, right? Because that screws up the whole job. Like you go look at a service business, if one sub-trade's late, it affects all the other sub-trades. It affects the whole project, for sure.
Hey, Greg, I don't want to go into detail, but here's a good example. I gotta tell you this example. Got one more example about that. I've got a guy, carpenter, doing my back deck and back patio area. And 2 weeks ago, he gave one of the big companies my order for this specific type of asphalt kind of concrete that he's going to pour 2 weeks ago. Every day he's telling me they're not shipped. It's late. This is 2 weeks now. I said, buddy, you got to go to the guy and you got to ask for a discount because now you got a pissed off customer. And I guarantee if he goes back to that company, he's going to Home Hardware, that he's going to get a discount. He'll probably get 10 or 15, 20% discount because they made the mistake. They took the order and they're 2 weeks late and I'm pissed off. So, I mean, never give up on the fact that you're still in the driver's seat. And if the vendor screws up, you're even more in the driver's seat. Now, you don't go and bulldoze your way, but certainly in a nice way, you can get some money for that. And you either take it as a profit or give a break to the client that you're dealing with. Amen.
Yeah.
I like that you finished it with an amen. Well, and just one more quick point. I think just what you pointed out, I think it's easy to forget if you're in a service-based business and you are a sub-trade, you're a vendor for a GC. That relationship matters, right? You might have your vendors that you're dealing with, but if you're a middleman, you're also a vendor to somebody else. So make sure that as you're going through it, if you're protecting those relationships, you're protecting them both ways.
That's right.
Yeah, 100%.
Now I'm done.
Okay, thanks for joining us. Thanks for talking about a subject that, quite frankly, I don't see anybody talking about on a podcast, just vendors and relationships. You know, to most, maybe it doesn't seem like a hot topic, but as we've discussed today, it's a really important subject and can make a big difference.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the More Profit, Less Stress podcast. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform and leave a comment or review if you're feeling generous. To learn more about us and what we do, check out our website. Until next time, take care.